Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Very excited to be here in Frankfurt. Very hot. Are you all okay? Yes, great. And also, it's been a pleasure to be listening to the conversation. I'm not a designer myself, and so it's very interesting to be able to see where design is going and what is the impact of design, for example, in a profession like mine, working with policy and innovation economics, and also engaging with citizens on the ground. So as we think about designing for democracy, I urge you to envision a green and digital deal that's grounded on data democracy and active citizen participation. As we all know, we stand at the epicenter of a poly-crisis age where we face a multitude of interconnected challenges: global conflicts, escalating energy costs, unprecedented inflation with a strong impact on our life cost, climate emergency, migration issues, disruption in the supply chain, and shortages of resources. We live in the Anthropocene era where human activities are pushing the Earth to its breaking point. It was after the Second World War that humanity went through a great acceleration, marked by exponential growth in resource use, material flows, pollution, technology, and energy conversion. This unchecked acceleration is now pushing us towards an unsustainable future, where globalization based on energy and material extraction, alongside a culture of mass production and consumption threatens to break our planetary boundaries. However, it's not all doom and gloom. I strongly believe that we are at a crossroads, and we are presented with an historical opportunity to redesign our societies and the economies for the better. The most pressing of our challenges, the climate crisis, along with the equally critical biodiversity crisis, need a radical shift in our approach. We urgently need to move towards a new model of prosperity, changing how we consume, how we reduce our waste, and how we engineer our infrastructures, in particular if we think at the acceleration due to technological convergence of mass-scale computation, artificial intelligence, quantum, and the war for microchips. We cannot only accelerate digitization. We need to give a direction to technological change and the ecological transition to attain social and environmental sustainability. By putting people first and reimagine a development model where we no longer take from nature, but we give back. We need to accelerate our effort to achieve net zero emission by 2050 and to cut the greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030, mindful of the impending social and ecological crisis that loom over us like a tsunami. We know this is absolutely critical and very, very difficult to reach. Let's don't ignore the elephant in the climate room, as John Schellenhuber from the Climate Institute of Potsdam says all the time. Our built environment, through its development, operation, demolition, contributes to 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions. If you combine with the food industry, they contribute to 70% of GHG emissions globally. This calls for a radical shift from a linear, resource-intensive petroeconomy to a circular, biogenerative bioeconomy. We must create additional carbon sinks to eliminate the CO2 that's been amassing in the atmosphere since the Industrial Revolution, and cities could become these carbon sinks that we need, and we need a network of cities that are there. Europe has been setting the stage with the European Green Deal, and Ursula von der Leyen is putting all her effort to make the European Green Deal possible. But to ensure that this transformation is just and inclusive, we cannot do it top-down with regulation, with binding law from the European Commission. We need a grassroots approach, and this is where the new European Bauhaus comes into play. This initiative, launched by President von der Leyen in 2020, is aimed at unleashing a grassroots movement to imagine and create real-world projects that have a direct impact in people's life and behavior, combining arts, science, technology, ecology, and democracy to transform our future and the future of industrialization. This means that we have to start working, as it was said at the very beginning, much more in a multidisciplinary way, technologists and scientists together with urban planners, with architects, with designers, with economists and technology experts in order to achieve concrete change with real-world projects. 100 years ago, the Bauhaus was founded in Weimar, Germany, as a response to the cataclysm of the First World War, which led to great upheaval in many different areas and laid the foundation for modernist architecture, merging the culture of design and ecology. The new European Bauhaus want to pave the way for a new model of innovation where, again, arts, ecology, democracy go hand in hand. We have seen during the pandemic how difficult this is, also to involve people and understand science through a democratic approach. The Bauhaus at the moment, and Ursula von der Leyen just renewed another wave of investment of 100 million. 100 million have already been invested in concrete projects. There are 450 partners. There are at the moment 6 lighthouses demonstrators in more than 13 European regions. There will be another 6 now, and today they've been presented the new European Bauhaus prizes. So every year this is the 3rd edition, and we have fantastic, on-the-ground projects that are experimenting with new material, bio-based material, affordable housing, new spaces, designing green cities, and so on. I think that the European cities offer the perfect starting point for such transformation. The smart city vision cannot be technology first. It has to be people first. It has to start from real needs of people in their daily life and from environmental and ecological challenges. Europe can become an example for decarbonization and democratic digitization, marrying the European Green Deal and Europe Digital Strategy, and we have 100 now net zero cities with the EU missions that are actually at the frontier of what it means to really change on the ground. I think it's a wake-up call to transform our cities in carbon-neutral spaces and embrace the circular economy, designing new way of living and working. Cities like Barcelona, Helsinki, Hamburg, Amsterdam, and Copenhagen have already set ambitious climate plan, and they're achieving their carbon neutrality by 2050, but even cities like Copenhagen, 2035. So there are a lot of experiments going on now. One of the best examples, I used to be the Chief Technology and Digital Innovation Officer of the city of Barcelona, has been, and it is now developing further, the Barcelona Superblocks. We reclaim 60% of public space, removing cars from the city center and reducing gas emissions through these superblocks. Many other cities are following with renaturalization process. This enables the superblock. There are now 16 self-sufficient neighborhoods, so the cars are away, and they become green areas, 10% more of green spaces, electric bicycles, space for pedestrians, but also social infrastructures and cultural infrastructure for kids, rethinking public space for the citizens, taking back public space for the citizens, and rethinking this cultural and social infrastructure. So at the heart of this green urban transformation lies the need for digital infrastructure as a critical urban common good that collects public data on energy consumption, mobility, water management, and pollution. I think the combination between net zero as a goal, data as a common good, and democracy as citizen involvement on the ground could be a model that we have to experiment and maybe grow. In Barcelona, we started from engaging citizens. I think there is no way that you can do ambitious projects that look at the future if you don't get communities involved. And policymakers know that very well. It takes time and ambition and courage to engage citizens, but you cannot take decisions without the engagement of citizens. Barcelona prototype, one of the largest in the world participatory democracy movement, and we had 400,000 citizens citizens engage in shaping the agenda of the city. 70% of the proposals that became the action plan of the city of Barcelona came directly from citizens. It is not easy, but I think it is essential to sustain a long-term goal of a city where citizens are at the core. And we use technology that was designed as a public good. The data owned by the citizens, so protecting their privacy and autonomy, and then it became a common good that scaled at the European level. So now the European Union is using the participatory platform we built in Barcelona for the entire Europe, and many other cities are adopting it, the same open source, open standards, and owned by citizens themselves. So here you can see how data can be conceived as a public infrastructure that creates public value. So I've been really involved many years in creating these city data commons. If you look at the urban infrastructure, energy monitoring, the grids, noise monitoring, the water metering, garbage collection, parking spot, and transportation, data is really a meta-utility. It's a public infrastructure that you need to govern and own democratically and then open up to the talent of the city. They can be startups, they can be innovators, designers, to build value on top of it. But the data needs to be also protecting our privacy, our fundamental rights, and our autonomy, our self-determination, as you call it in Germany. And so we've been unleashing this kind of infrastructure using also a decentralized, privacy-enhancing data infrastructure to give back data sovereignty to citizens. If you want to know more about the new data deal and conceiving data as a digital public good, you can read a study. We have been writing a case study at the UCL, University College of London, this Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose with Rainer Cattell, Mariana Mazzucato, and others. So I'm now working on this concept of how to make sure that data is not only being held by private companies, and we can build alternatives to the monopolistic data use that we see today, monopolistic data platforms. So in Hamburg, we are prototyping a universal data sharing law. So we're saying if a provider, for example, all these electric mobility providers, all these scooters you have all around here, for example, in mobility, but also energy, housing, measuring the CO2 emission, if the providers can exchange the data with the city hall, and then the data gets transferred in a data trust, a data intermediary, which has a public mission to protect our privacy, but at the same time make the most out of data while preserving, fundamental rights, but also creating value for everyone. So you can build value on top. So today this doesn't happen. And when I was working in Barcelona, it was so simple as putting, I don't know who works in government here, a data sovereignty clause in procurement contracts. So all the contracts we do as a city, that's, every service we procure to public procurement, now the data usually stays with the provider. And we ask, okay, how can we get this data that we all produce back and, use it in the public domain, use it to unleash all the creativity that we have and to tackle the fundamental problems that we have as citizens. So basically, it's data sharing for the public interest. And we have an event at the federal level in Berlin next week where we're going to discuss it with the federal government and also with a lot of politicians, because it's a moment where Europe could make a difference to prototype an alternative to data extractivism. What is data extractivism? Well, only a few companies, we are in I'm an innovation economist. I think we have never seen an economy that's so concentrated power-wise and infrastructural power-wise as the digital economy. Only few companies, if we look at artificial intelligence, even less companies, have the capacity to gather all this data, all the general intelligence that we produce and create algorithms and systems to extract profit. How about, try to move, and this is my friend Shoshana Zuboff that, of course, talks about surveillance capitalism. So we are monitored, we are tracked, all our, information it predicts the model of what we're going to be doing in the future, and we saw how this can be detrimental to democracy. For example, if used in election, or for example, is used with people that can be discriminated based on race, on gender, or their socioeconomic background. So why don't we move away from surveillance capitalism and try to lead a way where innovation, we can do innovation responsibly with human values and citizen at the center. And I know you will be very skeptical now because you say, okay, great, you are experimenting all these things with cities. It's not only Barcelona, it's a network of cities, and I love from the bottom up a network of cities that can scale data democracy, decarbonization, and green cities. I think we're going to see a lot of great things coming out. But how about Europe? I'm sure in this room you don't believe that Europe can be an innovator, right? You're like, okay, we're lagging behind. We have the big tech companies in the US. We have the Chinese equivalent. Where is Europe? But Europe has been now laying out a constitution for a digital age. Yes, it's a legal framework with the Digital Service Act, the Digital Markets Act, the Data Governance, the AI Act, and of course GDPR, which protects our rights as people with our data. And with this kind of new regulation, we can set the foundation for a next wave of innovation that protects people and the planet. So it doesn't hurt us, but we can use really technology and the power of technology and collective intelligence in order to tackle the big challenges of society. And this regulation doesn't block innovation. This is not true. Sometimes we hear, okay, it blocks maybe monopolistic winner-take-all innovation where only a few companies, the big platforms today, the big tech, have a lot of power. So in this period, the European Parliament has done something that I think also you should pay attention to. I think maybe Kate, again, in the end, can comment on this. I think getting AI right is very important because the opportunities are huge, but the risks also are very big. So we need to build society and state capacity in artificial intelligence and let democratically accountable bodies shape the future of AI. So I'm convinced about this because we cannot have this exponential growth and let it grow exponentially while our institutions don't really understand what's going on. We need to build next generation institutions capable of integrating artificial intelligence in the way they operate to build better schools, better healthcare, better cities, to improve our life. And so we need to make sure that we do that. And last week, the US passed a groundbreaking proposal. Well, it will have to be discussed. It's a parliament proposal with the Council and the European Commission. But they distinguish between AI systems that are prohibited, high risk, and low risk. And they contain also strict binding regulation for generative AI and foundational models to ensure that we can audit these systems, that they are secure and impartial. The law also bans biometric surveillance in European public spaces, which I think you will be pretty happy about this in Germany. I know that you care about your privacy. And they put citizen privacy, the fundamental rights, and civil liberty at the heart of using artificial intelligence, with the aim of protecting European citizens from intrusive and potentially discriminatory surveillance practices. Artificial intelligence systems, which are used to recognize emotion, gender, sexual orientation, and predictive policing systems are also banned. Now, we're going to have to see how this evolves, but we welcome this as an important achievement. At the same time, the Parliament recognizing that mass profiling and algorithms that have contributed to the spread of disinformation and fake news poses a huge risk to democracy, as previously seen in the use of social media during elections. We don't want to get there again. We have already a wave of populism in Europe, and we don't want to get there again. The inclusion in the high-risk category of AI system used to influence voters demonstrate the importance of protecting the integrity of the democratic process. And I think actually the alternative platform that I showed you before, that the European Union is using for deliberation and participatory democracy is much safer, it's built with accountability, transparency, and it's owned by us, by the citizens. So I believe that this could be pretty important in the spirit, for example, of CERN, like a big scientific institution, We should now really move into a global cooperative effort to advance human-centered AI, technology, knowledge, and application that enable us to use it to tackle the biggest challenges. And yes, we need a strong alliance between governments, the AI labs, civil society, and cities to achieve this big task. I think mandating access to corporate data, this is part of the Data Act at the moment in Europe, and to unconstrained base models that are now only accessible to private companies without any oversight from governments or academia will be very important, because we have to make sure that those systems work as we possibly, within the boundaries, let's say, of democracy before we put them into the market. So this all kind of coming together with a very interesting project that is the Center for Algorithmic Transparency as part of the new European Bauhaus that will be based in Sevilla. And that's where I hope a lot of experiments, bringing in designers, technologists, scientists, experts, also, societal experts, anthropologists to, let's say, design the future of those systems can happen in Sevilla, in a building that's going to be carbon neutral, energy positive, and it's designed with the new European Bauhaus principles in mind. So I'm going to end, I think, with an optimistic note, because yes, we have so much problems, but I think we have to be optimistic looking into the future. And I think that we're usually presented with only two ways for our possible digital future. The one way we know it is the big tech from Silicon Valley, and we are all using their products, as it was said before. And the other way is the big state, the Chinese way, where all this data is amassed and controlled by central entities that determine credit, social scoring, and so on. And I think that both systems are not really suited to our democracy, and also they're not suited to liberal democracy, to protect our fundamental rights, our citizen values, and so on. So I think we need a third model, and this model is big democracy. And we maybe are at a point in time and an historical time where we have to show that we are capable of conceiving a new social contract for the digital and the net zero age. And this social contract is about, on one side, governing data and artificial intelligence democratically and in the public interest, and also being able to design a new development model that gives back to nature, because we have this fundamental crisis, which is the climate crisis that, concerned humanity right now. I think designers have to be central in this conversation and in this project. You are part, I think, of a way to build together a European innovation model that guarantees full democratic participation of citizens and workers, that protect the environment, our data, and the fundamental rights of people. And I'm sure with this capacity that you have in the community and from the ground up, creating strong alliances, we can make sure that we have this third big democracy model out there, and we have concrete projects to show that this is possible. Thank you very much.